Sounds good.
Revolution from your bed, and we are in a new season. And I actually have a special guest. I met Yair when I was admitted to a hospital following my own self diagnosis of POTS. Yair was there for other circumstances, but we ended up sitting for hours upon hours every day talking, and we remain friends more than 15 years later. Yair is a life coach that is actually specializing in helping young people find their place in the world and connect to their authenticity. Welcome to my podcast, Yair. I'm super happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm super excited.
So cool. This is going to be a bit different than what I'm usually doing because, as you might have known, usually I'm bringing guests that did something regarding recovery from illness, or they're trying to build something a bit different. And this time it's not going to be more of an interview, it's going to be more like a conversation. And the conversation that we thought about doing today, it's about finding your authentic self. And I'm willing to be the guinea pig for today's session, because I'm feeling lately that I'm stepping a bit away from my own authenticity. So I think
Mhm.
this one is going to be super interesting. Welcome, Yair.
Definitely. Thank you. Yeah, so I think the best way to get started is for you to like share a bit about like what you found yourself struggling with.
Oh, thanks. It's funny to be on the other side of the mic. So yeah, as some of my audience know, I founded a few startups and charities, and I've been involved a lot with patient engagement and what I call patient empowerment. And recently, I feel a bit of a dissonance between this grandiose feeling you have stepping on stage, talking to a few hundred people, and then the humbleness you face with dealing with daily life, especially while struggling with a relapse of your illness. In the last few months, I have a huge relapse. It's one of the reasons I haven't recorded any episodes in the last 3 or 4 months. So this would be my main issue, I think.
Okay. So what do you feel like is kind of like missing?
I think that this genuine feeling that you wake up in the morning and you feel kind of in tune with yourself, and you walk out there to the world, and you're just you, no matter if you're going to the supermarket or standing on
Mhm.
stage or having a coaching session in your case. I feel that um, it's hard for me to bring myself, my true self, to places, to really be present. I think that would be
Mhm.
the point.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting, like, because we can take this in like several directions. And I think what I'm kind of curious about is when was the last time you did feel that you were able to bring like your authentic self to like the day to day?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's more for therapy, I think, but that was I'm afraid it was very long ago. Very long ago. I think it
Mhm.
was maybe during the lockdown, during COVID, 2020, 2021. I met my current, which was my girlfriend, my current new wife. And I felt that I fell in love with myself again because there were less noises around, and I could focus on what I really want. And I told my listeners this story that I stepped away from a startup that I worked on for 3 years because it was not healthy for me and I was burned out. And I just
Yeah, I
felt
remember
like
that.
I'm me again. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the like startup of today?
Yeah. So we've been working, me and some close friends of mine, we've been working in the last year and a half, almost 2 years, on the idea of a patient school, which a patient school, as you might know, is a place where patients are being trained. It doesn't have to be a physical place, it can be an online, in a few things. First of all, is taking control and responsibility over their own care using self-management and some aspects of coaching. patient education, which is things you need to know regarding more health literacy about your illness. So the idea is wonderful, and my aim was to create a sort of a movement. So I believe the movement idea is starting to roll because I talk a lot about it, and some organizations are starting to roll it. But my own startup, like my own patient school, is not lifting up because of life, and it's kind of damaging my own sense of authenticity.
Hmm. Is it the fact that it's not really like picking up that's feeling like it's damaging your authenticity?
Yeah, I think I recognize it a bit as kind of a failure and returning to patterns because, we have a lot of co-founders, everybody's an expert, everybody brings their own voice, and eventually life happen in the way, and then I feel like I have every qualification, every piece of motivation to make it happen, but I can't. It's just like something is completely blocked there. And
Mhm.
the way it affects my authenticity is that my authentic self would have been more, hey, let's what we call bootstrap it. Let's just pick it off the ground. Let's put our material somewhere in the on the internet and kind of invite patients that we know to use it, like really act like a startup. But because we try to make it like a perfect thing, it's just
Mhm.
staying in the drawer for so many years and nothing happens.
I see. So like, well, I mean, this is interesting because like here, basically, it feels like the conflict is between the other people involved and where you come up.
Yeah.
So like, what do the other founders, co-founders say about this? Like, they really insist on it being like perfect? Because like nothing is perfect. So,
Yeah, nothing is perfect, but I think that we have a lack of communicating our own. I don't know if I should call it authenticity. Maybe I get the term wrong, but everybody has
uh,
their own view and their own belief of what these visions should be. Like some of us think that it should be rolled out no matter what. Some of us think it should be completely perfect. And what I feel is that I'm